HVDC cable is probably the biggest bottleneck in terms of the energy transition. As we move towards 2030, demand's going to outstrip supply by about 3 times.
Hello, I'm Ed Reed, editor of E-FWD, and I'm here today with Ian Douglas from XLCC. Ian, I think there's so many interesting things going on around that sort of HVDC subsea cabling. It's kind of hard to know sometimes where to start. I guess, what's the opportunity? What made you look at this sort of part of the energy puzzle and think that's what you wanted to build a company around?
I think it was recognition that HVDC cable is probably the biggest bottleneck in terms of the energy transition. As we move towards 2030, demand's going to outstrip supply by about 3 times. And we as the UK, we've got the privilege of having one of the largest markets in the world, both for grid and for offshore wind interconnectors, export cables. And we don't have an indigenous HVDC manufacturing capability. So that was really the opportunity, and something which we knew from before that people were struggling with backlogs of 7 to 10 years in order to get the cable to connect offshore wind to the grid.
And so the market at the moment, it's sort of undersupplied? Where does supply come from? Who are your sort of competitors, I guess?
The market is hugely undersupplied as we stand today. There were 3 European players who between them have about 84% market share, based in various countries across Europe. And as we stand, they're looking at, as I say, 7 to 10 year delivery times for cable. So our view is that by bringing HVDC to the UK at scale, very focused, small number of products, that we can deliver in a timely manner at an incredible economic price point as well.
And so what sort of projects do you think would be the sort of natural consumers for your future HVDC production?
So it's really any project where HVDC becomes economic, which is typically anywhere between 60 and 100 kilometres from the grid connection is where HVDC starts to become economic. And so in offshore wind, it's as the offshore wind farms move further away, particularly when you look at things like floating offshore wind, which obviously by its nature is further offshore. But also people are now having to go further to connect to the grid. So that's definitely one use case. The other one is of course the grid upgrade, the great grid upgrade. We're going to spend 80 billion on upgrading the grid over the next 20, 30 years as we move to clean power 2030, and then we have all the electrification after that. The whole grid needs to be revolutionised, and a lot of that is going to be through subsea HVDC. And then finally, it's the interconnectors. There is this whole concept of a global supergrid, and we're increasingly seeing more and more interconnections between different countries as a way really to let's say follow the sun. People need power at different times of the day from when other countries are producing it, and you can make the whole global grid more efficient by interconnections.
And so do you see XLCC as primarily serving sort of domestic UK demand, or sort of looking further afield? Obviously, a number of people are looking at this kind of the grid opportunity.
I mean, initially our focus is predominantly the UK. I mean, why wouldn't it be? I mean, we have such a huge market on our doorstep, but clearly beyond that, there's a huge amount of cable needed as other countries start to increase their own reliance on offshore wind and other renewables. There's about 28,000 kilometres of cable needed in the next decade. And the global supply today is about 6,000 kilometres. So it's an incredible opportunity globally. But really it is, initially a huge amount of work on our own doorstep. We then have wider Europe, and of course there's a global market as well.
So I mean that's very much the big picture. So how does XLCC sort of find its way into kind of tapping this market? How do you go from this kind of seeing this opportunity to actually kind of executing on it?
Yeah, it's about getting the right team with the right focus. So as I said before, the focus is really about predominantly 525 kilovolt XLP insulated cable, the next generation of cable. We will do 320, we will do copper, but really the focus is predominantly on bringing aluminium cable to market, with variants of that. And by having a factory which is predominantly focused on that, rather than people who are manufacturing in, let's say, legacy premises where you're trying to utilize machinery which is multi-purpose, by having a very clear focus on a very small number of products, you get incredible efficiencies. So we're doing that. We know that that next generation is exactly what the customers want. And to deliver that, we've put together what is a truly world-leading team of people. We've got some fantastic people from across Europe. Our CTO, Vega Larsson, has come from Nexans. 25, 30 years of experience, predominantly on subsea XLPE cable. We have a lady called Ragnhild Catalan who's leading our delivery team. Again, CEO in one of the competitors, responsible for global HV delivery. Sean Mercer, the CFO, he came from Carlisle, before that with Morgan Stanley, but again, really deep experience with startup companies. Our Director of Development, Paul Dixon, has built highly complex factories, life science facilities, etc., all over the world. So we've assembled a really great top team, and we've got a really good team below that of real sector experts. And so, we can really leverage that knowledge. We don't have to learn all the lessons people have learned in the past with HVDC. And we've, of course, found a fantastic site with some very unique properties there at Hunterston.
So let's talk about that site. I mean, how is it now? What do you need to make that into the grand factory that you're planning on?
Yep. So Hunterston itself, we've got 70 acres there. That's going to be our factory. That's going to create more than 800 jobs. We also have our site in Kilmarnock, where we're going to base our project sales and delivery. And then we have a training academy at Irvine. So Hunterston itself, as I say, it's a fantastic site. It's your classic, true brownfield site. It was a cold storage facility for multiple decades. So if you ever want a kind of picture of what the energy transition looks like, you've got 1980s Hunterston covered in coal being shipped all over the world, and then you've got this modern cable factory, completely clean environment, which is going to be producing the essential products for the energy transition for the next 50 years. And what we have there, we've got a deep water port, so that means our cable ships can access that 24/7, 365 days a year. But we've also had really fantastic support from all the different layers of local infrastructure. So North Ayrshire Council have been superb. We've worked really closely with the local college to develop our apprenticeship scheme. We've got 200 apprentices required in the factory, and so we're working closely with the colleges there. We've got our third cohort of apprentices now at Irvine, and that's going to be a facility which we continue to expand. And again, we're just working hand in hand with authorities like Scottish Enterprise. They've been very good at facilitating a number of key issues for us. And of course, we've got the investment from the Scottish National Investment Bank. And so, there's this concept of Team Scotland, which they talk about. And what we've seen very much is actually there is such a thing as Team Scotland, because we've seen great coordination in the different layers around us. So we're really appreciative of that.
And let's talk about that investment piece. I mean, I think obviously you mentioned you've got some investment now. Presumably, you need more to kind of take the next steps.
Yeah.
How's that moving forward?
Yep. So we raised a lot of private money initially, and then in September last year we had a commitment from the National Wealth Fund. That was then followed with a commitment from the Scottish National Investment Bank in January of this year, alongside Haynesford Renewables. That effectively funds us right the way through to completion of the development phase. But what we'll be doing towards the end of the summer is start to engage with investors for the construction round. And that's to raise all of the money then to actually build the factory. And the intention is that we'll actually break ground on site in March or April of next year.
And how do you think the investor appetite is? I mean, I think, people talk about risk, people talk about, new industries. Are investors interested in the XLCC proposition?
Yeah, we've had really good engagement from investors. I've been on board now about 2.5 years. We've had great engagement with investors. People who understand the energy transition understand the need for HVDC. And so you're not selling people that the product's needed, you're not selling people the gap in the market. The hurdle we need to get over to some degree is just this ongoing market failure, whereby people who want to place orders in 2027, they need the factory under construction before they can place the orders. And so we're just working now with various parties in terms of how do we build credit-worthy offtake from customers who actually haven't reached their own FID yet. And so we're working with a number of parties to try to carve out exactly what that looks like. And that's really the final leg of the stool, if you like, because product-wise, we've manufactured our product already. That's going under extensive tests. That's gone incredibly well. The factory design itself is very well developed. The team are coming along superbly. We've probably got about 70 people in-house now, plus a much larger group of contractors, of course. And then the final element really is just securing that offtake from the various categories of customer.
And then, so you start building next year, fingers crossed. When do you think you might be able to sort of start shipping kind of first cable?
Yep, so we'll produce our first test cable in 2029, and we'll have cable available commercially in 2030. You actually have about a year period between making your first cable and actually then getting it into market, because there's a very intensive testing program. So the factory will be there in all its glory at the end of 2028, but really we'll be loading the first cable onto our cable ships in 2030. In time, of course, for a huge wave of demand from the areas I spoke about before.
And I suppose just those cable ships, I mean, obviously that feels like another sort of potential bottleneck. Yeah. How do you think that will work? Do you have sort of line of sight on those as well?
We know from experience, my own experience, and also from the teams, that it's really important to be able to control your channel to installation, your delivery mechanism. And so controlling the ships to install the cable is really important. So that's included within our fundraise. Because again, people are finding that if you don't have that vertically integrated structure and own your means of delivery, then you're at the behest of the market in terms of availability. And of course, if people are planning for projects in 5, 6, 7 years' time, they want to know that you've got control of the delivery means, because that is again one of the key bottlenecks. And for HVDC, the vessels are quite specialised.